Hey, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai Bahasham Rakakudash. I want to give the honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in grace and peace to you elect around the four winds, believing and pushing this truth in all sincerity. May the blessing of election be upon your houses. This is your fellow servant, Rakaria from the GMS Orlando camp, coming at you with another impromptu lesson. Tonight I wanted to get into this article that I found from Rutherford.org, and it's a commentary from what seems to be an Edomite called John Whitehead. All right, and in this article he makes a couple of good statements that I want to touch on. Lord wants us edifying unto you elect. It's beautiful how, as we approach the end of this Idumean empire, you have a lot of Edomites who are becoming whistleblowers, and telling of the cruelties and the atrocities done by his own people. And now these whistleblowers are especially starting to turn up amongst these middle-class Americans, all right, who are being phased out of Esau's new society. It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. The title of this article is "The Real National Emergency: Endless Wars, Failing Infrastructure, and a Dying Republic." It says, every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in this final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed, and that describes Esau to a T. All right, he has a unsatiable desire to conquer, like it says in Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter. All right, let's get it. His desire is as hell and death, and he can't be satisfied. This is Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 5. It says, and yet also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man. Neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto himself all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. All right, and this hellish desire has led to his own destruction. All right, this hellish desire, this insatiable hunger to conquer and to be at war and to deal treacherously, all right, has led to his own demise, and we're witnessing it as we speak. All right, Esau's greed has gotten him in the very same predicament he finds himself in now. All right, where his back is against the wall, and now these nations who are once drunk with the wine of Babylon are now starting to awaken out of that stupor, due to the vibration of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai being pushed out, and these prophecies coming to pass. All right, they're starting to wake up and turn against this whore, man. All right, which is all Bible prophecy. It's all Bible prophecy. And the prophets have been warning of this time, starting with our elders, apostles, on down, for many years now. And now we're starting to see the sword fall right upon Esau. And he's the one who forged it. But it says 70 years after President Dwight D. Eisenhower warned about the cost of military-industrial complex, America is still stealing from its own people to fund a global empire. All right, and that's been happening for generations, and it hasn't stopped. All right, these elites, all right, which is really where the focal point lies. All right, it lies in the elites of Esau, Edom, those who control the resources, your Oppenheimers, your DuPonts, your Gettys. All right, these people have not only been stealing from the world, but they've been stealing from their own as well. And as the scriptures say, he that doth evil to himself, to whom will he do good? All right, and Esau, he's been doing evil to himself since America was founded. From the civil wars to the world wars, they've all been Idumean skirmishes that have been started from their hellish desire. Capitalism is a product of Esau's hellish desire that has been destroying the people of his own nation. And in order to fuel this capitalist society, in order to fuel this wicked society, Esau continues to wage war on his own and on these heathen nations. It's truly been a reign of terror from these Idumeans. But like it says in Sirach or Ecclesiasticus, the 21st chapter and the 4th verse. It says, to terrify and to do wrong will waste riches. And that's exactly what the so-called white man has done. He's wasted his riches by terrifying and doing wrong. And the very same terrifying that he's done, not only to our nation, but to these other nations, is coming right back on his head. All right, the Lord always works full circle. The Lord's judgment is like a ring, baby, and it's coming full circle for the so-called white man. It says, America is still stealing from its own people to fund a global empire. In 2025 alone, the U.S. has launched airstrikes in Yemen, Operation Rough Rider, bombed Houthi-controlled ports and radar installations, killing scores of civilians, deployed greater numbers of troops, and multiplied aircraft carriers to the Middle East, and edged closer to a direct war with Iran in support of Israel's escalating conflict, which the scriptures say that the least of the flock shall draw him out, and that's exactly what so-called the Israel is doing. They're drawing America out into that final battle. It says, each of these new fronts has been sold to the public as a national defense. In truth, they are the latest outpost in a decades-long campaign of empire maintenance. And I want to touch on this because that's a very powerful statement. All right, what's happening now, all right, and what's been happening through these wars that have been waged, through these civil wars, world wars, is Esau's empire maintenance. Because he's lived by the sword, because he was blessed by the sword, or he has to maintain, and that's how he amassed his empire. He has to maintain it, and the only way to maintain this empire, all right, that was forged on blood and war and rape, robbery, and murder, all right, is to maintain that. Is to continue to perpetuate war, rapery, and robbery. You know, this is Revelation 13. In verse 10, it says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. All right, and let's get this in Genesis 20 and verse 40. It says, and by the sword, let's start at verse 39. It says, and Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and of the dew of heaven from above. This is going into Esau's blessing. It says, and by the sword thou shalt live, and thou shalt serve thy brother, and it shall come to pass when thou shalt have dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. All right, so the so-called white man was blessed with the sword. All right, and by that sword, it was foretold that he would have to rule. You know, but you know the trick in that blessing, you know, was that by the very same sword he will conquer and live by, will be the very same sword that he will die by in the end. You know, that's why it says in Isaiah 33 and 1, woe to thee that spoilest, and thou wast not spoiled, and dealest treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee. When thou shalt cease to spoil, thou shalt be spoiled. And when thou shalt make an end to deal treacherously, they shall deal treacherously with thee. All right, and this spells out what's happening now at the end of this Idumean empire. All right, as Esau is trying to put down the sword, all right, that he's forged this empire by, he's being forced to pick it back up. There is no peace to the wicked. There hasn't been peace in America damn near since it was founded. Matter of fact, let's look up. It says the United States has been at war for approximately 225 out of the 243 years since its founding in 1776. So the majority, it says U.S. has spent about 93% of its existence engaged in some form of military conflict. So the majority of Esau's rule has been saturated and cursed by war. Esau's been cursed by war. It says 93% of the United States' existence has been engaged in some military conflict. All right, so he can't put down that sword because as soon as he does, these other nations are going to swoop in and take over him because he's dealt treacherously not only with the nation of Israel, but with these heathen nations. He shook the earth, through a fat man, a little boy, over there in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it devastated the world multiple times. Dropped napalms, airstrikes, all right, drone strikes. All right, he's devastated the world multiple times and has continued to do so for years. And the only way he's been able to amass, global control, as it were, is through war. And that very war is taking him out. Let me see if I get that in Psalms. Psalms 37:15. Their sword shall enter into their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. I'm going to start 14. The wicked have drawn out the sword, and have bent their bow to cast down the poor and needy, and to slay such as be of upright conversation. Their sword shall enter into their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. All right, and the sword is starting to enter into Esau's heart. The very same sword that he forged to reign over the nations in terror is the very same one that's killing him. And the beautiful thing is, his trump card is what's going to be used against him to completely and utterly wipe him out in the end. He forged the nuclear bomb. The Lord allowed him to forge the nuclear bomb to find out how to split the atom and to create weapons of mass destruction to destroy himself. This next war that's going to be waged with fuel of fire is something that he created through the Spirit of the Lord, all right, to be a trump card over these nations. But in true idiotic Edomite fashion, he sold his blessing to the other nations, and they're going to use it against him. This is the end of this Idumean empire, man. It says, in truth, they are the latest outpost in a decades-long campaign of empire maintenance. And this is exactly what it is, empire maintenance. In order for Esau to maintain his kingdom, he has to be at war. He has to live by the sword. That was his blessing. It says, one that lines the pockets of defense contractors while schools crumble, bridges collapse, and veterans sleep on the streets at home. And that's one thing that the Lord said he hates. A man of war that is poor, roughly paraphrasing. And America is saturated with homeless veterans, man. Missing limbs. Mind is gone through seeing and witnessing the atrocities of war out on the streets. No help. It says this isn't about national defense. This is empire maintenance. It's about preserving a military-industrial complex that profits from endless war, global policing, and foreign occupations, while the nation's infrastructure rots and its people are neglected. What most Americans fail to realize is that these ongoing wars have little to do with keeping the country safe and everything to do with propping up a military-industrial complex that has its sights set on world domination. War has become a huge money-making venture, and the U.S. government, with its vast military empire, is one of its best buyers and sellers. America's role in the U.S.-Ukraine conflict has already cost taxpayers more than $112 billion. And now the price of the empire is rising again. Clearly, it is time for the U.S. government to stop policing the globe, which they're not going to do, which is the same mistake they made in Rome. They had their military spread too thin, trying to conquer all the known world and forgetting about their home front. Esau's making the same mistakes in true idiotic fashion. It says, the U.S. military reportedly has more than 1.3 million men and women on active duty, with more than 200,000 of them stationed overseas in nearly every country in the world. American troops are stationed in Somalia, Iraq, and Syria, and Germany, South Korea, and Japan, and Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Oman, and Niger, Chad, and Mali, and Turkey, the Philippines, and northern Australia. These numbers are likely significantly higher, in keeping with the Pentagon's policy of not fully disclosing where and how many troops are deployed for the sake of operational security and denying the enemy any advantage. Which, if you want to read the rest of this article, you can. That's really what I wanted to get out of it. You know, this is empire maintenance. What's happening is empire maintenance. But that maintenance is failing. What once worked for him, twice worked for him, because those that World War I and World War II profited these elites in some sense. They were able to perform empire maintenance. They got away with it twice, but this third time is going to be their demise. And it's all according to the spirit of Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua. The Lord prophesied at these times. The Lord said there will only be 3 woes. And he allowed them to fill their belly with the first 2, essentially. And this third one, they're going to bite off more than they can chew. And the Lord is going to come with his beast of destruction. He's going to come on that cloud and completely wipe America, Babylon the Great, off the face of the planet Earth. But with that being said, that's all I had, Lord. Once edifying unto you elect, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai Bahashim Rakakodash. And double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. And grace and peace to you elect around the 4 winds, believing and pushing this truth in all sincerity. May the blessing of election be upon your houses. Shalom. Stay up.